What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Rooted and Relentless. I hope you know who I am by now. Steph Rubio, the host of this machine we have going over here, these fun conversations. I have a super special guest today. Erin Wiley is joining us, and she is a client experience strategist who helps female ADHD creative entrepreneurs build what she calls a dreamy client experience. And before you roll your eyes at the word dreamy, just listen up here, okay? We're not talking about pastel vibes and cute onboarding gifts, though I'm a big fan of something extra like onboarding gifts. We'll get there. We're talking about systems that protect your capacity, eliminate friction, increase referrals, and actually make your business easier to run, the stuff that matters at the end of the day. And Erin specializes in helping service providers identify where trust is quietly being lost in their business and how to fix it with simple, high impact tweaks that save time and increase client lifetime value. I know, Erin, one of the first times we chatted and you spit something like client lifetime value or customer lifetime value at me, and I knew that you looked at numbers and data. I was like, this is going to be great because there's talking and then there's actually actioning and then there's actions that make sense. So if you've ever felt overworked, under-referred, or like clients are ghosting somewhere between inquiry and invoice, then this conversation is probably going to hit. Erin, welcome officially to Rooted and Relentless.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
All right, let's dig right in. I know we have a lot to cover, so I'd love to just kind of start with when someone says client experience or customer experience, what do most people think it means or what are they missing? And you can answer both.
So, a lot of people just think of like, oh, well, as long as I do amazing deliverables, it's a great client experience. But it's not necessarily just about your deliverables because you can have amazing things that you provide them in the end. Client experience is a lot about how it feels kind of to work with you and how that process actually goes through. So, if it sucks working with you, but your deliverables are great, they're probably not going to want to say, hey, you should hire them, right? They're probably going to complain about you instead. So it's very important that you make them feel great and have a really good process of working with them, not just amazing deliverables.
Yeah, okay. So I'm obsessed with you said how it feels and you talked about the process in the end because I think what I find, and you would probably agree, obviously if you don't tell me, but that we go process, right? We have deliverables, we have this thing to sell, turn it into a process, make it easier, streamline it. And sometimes because of the systems in that process, how it feels can actually get lost. That has to be your
Mm-hmm.
North Star at the end of the day, is the experience you want them to have. That's what we're setting up. That's what the systems and the streamlines and the automations are supposed to be supporting, but they can hinder it if we're not careful.
Exactly. So even like you can have, say, automations with your systems to help you make it easier for you and your clients. But if they feel really cold and they don't sound like you, it's not going to make the client feel very taken care of or kind of welcomed with it.
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. I know I've seen that. And then what happens on the other side of it is when like people are talking about you or they're avoiding talking about you. Like you had referenced that for a second year, and both are bad. I mean, one can damage your reputation specifically if like all you got was delivered or barely or whatever. But if people avoid talking about you because it was just because they just got the deliverables they paid for and they didn't feel cared for or didn't feel like anything other than that number, that other person to deliver, then they avoid talking about you is also equally as bad because you're missing an entire revenue generating machine in referrals.
Exactly. And you can make them excited about working with you from even like the moment they inquire with you. You can get them excited and delighted. So, for example, people often have like contact forms on their websites. Some people have some automations with them, some people don't. So, it's more exciting if someone actually like replies back. Like I've been dealing with a lot of like medical stuff with my daughter, and oftentimes I don't even get any response back. So it's like, did they get it? Did they not? So at the very least, you should be responding back and telling them like how excited you are that they reached out to you, and that hey, if you can't, if you want to kind of have the call first and see if we're a good fit, you can say that. But making them kind of excited, and with that, reaching back out for saying like they inquired about you, have something exciting in that. So if as a service provider, you can even add something like, hey, here's like my portfolio. If say you are a copywriter, you could be like, hey, I saw that you inquired about copywriting. Here is like one of my awesome copywriting pieces. Go take a look. Or here is like a podcast that I did that I think based on what you're interested, you might really like. Or here's a freebie while you wait. Something to kind of get them really excited from that first initial moment. And then also with that, ideally, they're not waiting like 24 hours or even 48 hours for you to get back. If you can have something that's automated and you can template it so it's still like exciting, like, hey, so and so, it's so exciting that you reached out. Here is a link to book a call if you want to do a discovery call. Here's my portfolio. But having it automated, so whether it's like right after they inquire or even to make it less kind of automated feeling, you could do like 6 to 9 minutes after, but it responds to them. Because typically most people lose responses or lose leads without by not getting back to them in time. Like if I'm looking for someone, unless, hey, I know this is the person I want to work with. Like when I was looking for stuff for my daughter for medical stuff, I reached out to like 6 of the same kind of practitioner. And the ones who didn't reach out but to me within 3 days, they're not there. Like I'm moving on. So the ones who reached out within the first 24 hours, those are the ones I kind of walked forward with and see, are they going to be a good fit? So you're losing leads by not going quickly.
Yeah, I literally wrote, and then you said this is so funny. I love when this happens. Before you get back to me, I've moved on. Like probably already booked and paid someone. And that's what you're describing with the doctor's appointment, except for in those rare cases when I know the next thing I'll be hiring and who, because I've already built trust or something like that. But otherwise, it's this interesting like zone that we're in, is that people are buying quickly. They might be taking longer to decide. And a lot of times you don't even know about that decision time frame. But when they're ready, when they're at that decision point, they're moving quickly. They're ready like yesterday. And specifically when it comes to service providers, operational support, creatives and stuff like that, typically when people hire, I say they're like 2 years beyond needing that. And we know the reasons. I get it, budget, all of that. But I'm just talking about the reality, not the reasoning, that you're already behind like 2 years. When they get ready to hire, they are ready. And that's the difference in a hot lead and a warm lead. Is hot is like ready. They meet all of your criteria. They're ready to pay. They're ready to do what you need. They're ready for the work and they're ready now. And I like what you described, like it's a part of your delight, right? When you talk about your DREAMY framework and how you approach really just like delivering a stellar client experience and all the ripple effect that has on your business strategically. And I think of it like nurture. And I like that it had some through lines there. So delight is a little more like extra than nurture. But what you were talking about in the moment they inquire, yes, having the way they move to the next step of what you need, if that's book a call, if that's book and pay. But you also described just like immediately giving them something. Here's a podcast episode on the topic. Here's this other, free resource or something like that, so that you're still like scratching an itch and you are nurturing those folks. And that's going to be great for your hot, warm, or cold leads there. And you're saying to do that within the first 24 hours as well?
Yes. So like ideally, if you can have it automated and as soon as they inquire, they get that response back, that would be ideal. And even if you are someone who does discovery calls and you don't necessarily kind of have them send you a bunch of information first, see if they're a good fit for the discovery call. If you just do discovery calls, even having just like the discovery call link on your website. So if they don't want to just do a contact form, they can just go ahead and actually book a call with you. And then on your discovery call link, you have pretty much in all of the different apps that I've seen people use. Like if people want to use Calendly, like the free version, or like a TidyCal, which like that's what I bought before I did Dubsado, and it's like one-time payment for life. All those kind of things have still like an inquiry form to an extent. And on that inquiry form, you can have questions to kind of rule out if they're not a good fit, then they're going to just stop booking the call. So you're letting them take that next step. You're not being like, my R in DREAMY is like remove the friction. You're not being that friction. You're letting them move forward in the process because they want to get going. So let them book that call. Have those little questions if you want, whether that is like, this is the typical range of what my services cost, or these are the specific services I offer. So kind of ruling out if they're not ready for you, they can rule themselves out that way. So let them kind of just go do what they need to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I see a lot of times, and I think the stage of your business definitely plays into this. When we're starting, we're like, we need the money. We need to validate people pay with us. We're like, yes to everything, right? And it's hard for me to attack that and say there's anything wrong, because I think that taking discovery calls when you're new with everyone trains you to talk about it easier, So I think there's always this kind of trade-off, but you get to a stage without fail, if you stay committed to your business, that you need to qualify people. You need to stop saying yes to every single call, because your time is one of your greatest resources. And saying yes to people can also be defeating. So even when you're in the beginning, you say yes, and then they were misaligned from the beginning. So removing friction doesn't mean you also don't qualify your people in the process. And those questions that you're talking about are those qualifications. When you reveal what it costs to work with you, whether it's a stated $4,000 or this is the range, they know if their budget is in that range or not, and will remove themselves. And that's not a bad thing. You're cutting out, like a lot of people, especially again, depending on the stage, we're like, we hate the possibility of that. I bet people listening to this could have immediately been like, wait, I'll lose the opportunity to talk to someone about my services. Yeah, they can still live in your ecosystem. You can still drip things to them. That's when you're in the nurture phase. If they're not qualified right now, if they don't have budget, they might one day, or they're just not quite sure of the value you offer being that, because they don't know you yet. They haven't seen this. But with some of that nurture, with some of that, here's what else I've done. Here's a podcast episode where I talked about that. They'll see the power. Now that nurture has moved them into, I have the budget, or I'm making the budget. And suddenly now they're qualified. So I think you might have already answered this, but when we talk about like removing friction, where do you see people unintentionally making it harder to hire them? Was it in that initial, what we were just talking about, that kind of like immediately when they show interest, or would you say anything else?
I'd say like there's kind of two parts. So definitely the inquiry stage of like not getting back to them or not letting them book soon enough kind of thing. And then also once you have the discovery call and say like, you had an amazing discovery call, you rocked it, you're vibing, everybody's kind of feeling really good about it. And then you say, hey, I'll get back to you. Like I'll send you over like the proposal and invoice and the contract. And then it's taking either forever, or you're like overloading them with like a whole bunch of different links in one email, or it's you're playing email tag back and forth, because it's like, oh, here's the proposal. And then you wait for them to see if they want it. And they're like, hey, yeah, let's do this. And then you have to send like the next link of like, here's the invoice, here's the contract. So kind of removing that friction even is just so helpful. So like one way for sure, people should have anything you do more than once, you should have a template for. So even if it's like a custom proposal to an extent, there should still be some sort of template that you just edit small details of it. So like their name, the exact part of the project that you're delivering to them, the pricing, but like you should have that template. So for example, in Dubsado, I have proposals that are almost like a mini sales page for each of the different services that I have. And if I do need to, I can just go in and quickly edit what I need. And then it is directly linked to the contract and the invoice. So if I send someone my proposal, they get one link, they click it, they look through the proposal, and then they can also pick through Dubsado. Like if they want to do this plus these add-ons, they can pick their package. Once they hit submit, it directly just moves them to the next stage of like reading and signing the contract. And then once they hit submit for that, it immediately takes them to the invoice. Potentially, you could have a client sign with you within an hour of getting off a discovery call because they have all the stuff they need, versus potentially taking days. And if you're taking days, they're now, instead of being all excited after the call, they might be starting to think of like, oh, that's a big number. Like, I don't know about this anymore. Or if this person is so hard to work with, to just like get booked with them, how is actually working with them going to feel? Because this process is like, not making me so happy. Same with like, if you send stuff that is a little hard to understand or doesn't really look as professional, they might start to question, do I want to work with you or not?
Yeah, okay. It happened again. That's when I know we're having the right conversation between the right two people, because I wrote trust. I circled these little things. This is my ADHD brain of like, here's the point. Don't miss it. This is what you want to circle back on. And you covered it though when I said, can you do what I need? So basically that's the trust erosion, when if it takes you a day or two to get me the proposal, and then it takes you 2 to 3 to then send the invoice when you get a yes from me, and now we're a week or two into something that could have taken a day, my trust will start to erode. Like, how long is it going to take you to do what I'm hiring you for? Because I'm moving quick over here. Like most of us are moving quickly. If part of why I'm hiring you is for any sort of operational support or creative support, it's not signaling to me that you're going to be able to do that quickly and efficiently if you can't even send me through your initial sign up from inquiry to actually booking and paying with you. You talk about removing friction. It sounds like you did that completely, and you don't really have to lift a finger because you're using a workflow in Dubsado. So they've inquired with you, you have some sort of sales conversation, and once you put them in that workflow, it's happening quite literally automatically. Do your follow-ups also happen in there automatically?
So I love Dubsado for that simple fact of I don't have to do the follow-ups. I can just go in and see, okay, they didn't do this thing, it followed up for me. So even for example, like the proposal, if they haven't signed the proposal, I can set it up so that, or if they haven't chosen their stuff and signed their contract, wherever in that stage they are of actually booking, Dubsado can then go in and be like, hey, after I've made my little templates of my emails of like, hey, just checking in do you have any questions? Even maybe add like, here's a little case study of something similar to you, kind of seeing like giving them that extra, why should I book with you? So it can automatically follow up for me. And then I just go in, and Dubsado also then kind of tracks where every person is in the stage of working with me, whether they're still in a lead, whether they're inquiry or booking, or whether they're actually already booked with me and kind of where they're at. I don't have to do any of that, like keeping track in my head, because I have ADHD too. And it's like, that's just too much. I forget where everyone is and what we're doing. So it tells me where everyone is, and it tells me if they've been followed up. And then if they followed up, it gives me that notification of like, okay, they have a question about this. Now I can go and respond. I didn't have to do any of that. And then even with that, so let's say you sent them the proposal on Friday, and they're taking some time to kind of figure it out. And maybe they want to talk with like their spouse, maybe they wanted to check a few financial things, and they decide to sign with you, say like 11 p.m. on Saturday. I'm not in my work laptop on a Saturday night, right? I am either sleeping or hanging out with my family, right? I'm not kind of be constantly on my laptop. So if they choose to book, my systems now are taking care of them, right? As soon as they book, they go through that process. It's automated that they then get like a little welcome email, so that they're excited, like, hey, thanks so much. You've got this contract signed. You're officially booked. You've paid. So excited for you. I even add like little like giffies to, I can't never gonna say that right, like gifts or like the giffies to them, because I think those are fun. And then I have something for them to do next to keep them excited, so that they're not kind of just sitting there like, oh, I'm excited, but I can't start anything. So my workflows kind of help remove that friction and help keep that excitement going.
Yeah, and that helps move everyone along. The fact that you're just referencing folks working outside of, like, I think of this when you've seen the email signatures probably that are like, when I work, I'm in different time zones. This is what works for me. Respond when you can. I think about this in the same way as we all, especially as entrepreneurs, have a 7-day week. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And some of us keep a traditional 8 to 4 work day or less or whatever, but not everyone does. And again, you just want to remove as many barriers as possible, barriers to entry, barriers to working with you. And you don't want your systems or yourself to become a barrier to someone working with you. And they quite easily could. I know that you have expectations as a part of your approach to folks. And I am huge on setting expectations, because I think that your communication and people knowing what to expect and when is also, it's like a prerequisite. When you think about a course you had to take before a course, it's like a prerequisite to them knowing what to do. I think that they move a little bit faster and more sure through a process of any sort of setting expectations, but also kicking off. I talk about setting expectations heavily when you actually kick off that program, right? How much of client dissatisfaction do you think is actually unclear expectations?
I think probably the majority of it is that they don't know what's going on. They don't know when they're going to hear from you, or when they reach out, are you going to be immediately following up with them, or is it going to be the next day? When you don't have clear expectations, they're kind of just sitting there like, I'm not so sure about this and this whole process. So I would say, like, unless you have really bad like deliverables or something else really like very glaring is happening, I'd say that like expectations, not understanding what's going to happen and how things work, is like the biggest number one issue once you start working with people.
Like, the goal I tell people is to answer every question before they have it, anticipate it and answer it. The goal is no questions. And it's okay to miss that goal, by the way. I'm not saying people will never have questions, and that's a bad thing if they do. But if that's the approach you take, to try to anticipate their needs, what do they need? What they need to know? And then you can start with that. So you're starting at like day 0, when on day 5, they might have had a question. We're letting them know what's coming in when, so that they know. Because when they have this unknown zone, this quiet creates stories. And that can be like in your onboarding process. Again, it can be that you don't have time for them if you can't get to it, but it can also be in your client relationship. So not just at the start, but later on down the line, if the client is left wondering what you're up to, and it's not about micromanaging. I talk about this, and it's not about them needing to know what you're up to. It's just about they should, right? Then they don't have any questions. When they know what you're working on and the progress you've made, or anywhere you got stuck, they can help you get unstuck, that you guys can solution and solve together. But if there's a big question mark, nothing's coming good from that question mark zone that they're living in, because they're creating these kind of like scenarios, if you will. So I like to anticipate needs, solve those needs before they ever even know that they have them, essentially. That's where you have a clean button up client experience from beginning to end, where what can they say bad about you? You know what I mean? Is they have nothing to do but rave, because you made it so easy. They didn't just have these steps automated. They knew what was coming before it happened, and they were prepared. So because we have focused so far on this chat about like the intake, the inquiry, like the calls, the start of the client relationship, we can easily draw it to that and just say, like, at the end of your discovery call, that's when you set expectations of what comes next. And you assume that because you're assuming the sell, hopefully at this point. You're telling them when they can start, what the costs will be, and what the next steps will be. I'll send you over a proposal. You look at that, you sign it when you're ready. Let me know if you have questions, obviously. And then after that, your actual invoice comes. You can schedule your kickoff call after that. You let them know so they're hearing it, but you've heard the 7 times, 7 ways in marketing. This applies to everything. So you're teeing them up for what's about to come. Then you're following that up, but making it really easy on yourself because it's automated. And you started to touch on this, Erin, but I'd be curious. I know that automation is huge, but you say automated but human, which is really important in this AI world. How do we automate without sounding like a downloaded personality?
So my biggest kind of suggestion for people is voice record to kind of hear how you actually talk. So whether that is you use chat. Now, Claude, personally, I love for making it sound more like you, but unless you pay for things in Claude, you can't necessarily record your voice. So what I often do is I go say to Gemini or I go to chat and I just like talk it out. How would I say this to the actual person? So then I can basically get what it would sound like for it to be me. And if I need to do some tweaks, then I can go and tweak it as is. But then that way, instead of it sounding like very generic, it's how I would talk. Right. And so you're not just taking like someone's template, you're making it sound like you. You might see someone's template of like, what are things I should include? But you speaking it is always going to sound a lot more like you if it's just coming out of you in your own head. So that kind of is like my number one thing. And also doing it ahead of time, especially when it comes to emails that are just like awkward. So if you're doing like a follow-up email in the moment, you're like second guessing everything you're saying. But if you just take out all the motion of it and you do that before that ever happens, then you can still make it sound like you and sound professional and still make them feel taken care of without you constantly overthinking like, ooh, is this not so great because you're in the moment and you're second guessing yourself constantly.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that actually. It's a tip. Sometimes the tips are the easiest, some of the most impactful. And you'll see a lot of this like when you're purchasing AI software or people who use it or whatever. I always look for this human centered, like a lot of people use that human first, human centered as a signal that though they use AI or they use tools that they take a human centered approach. I'm always looking for that. And that's what you want here because the last thing any of us want is to feel like a machine. I know it's like we all know you're using it, but we don't want to know or want to feel like that. And that's the case at the end of the day. So you can put me in a workflow, but don't forget at the end of the day that I am a person on the other side of these screens that we use,
Exactly.
There's some ways you can do that. And you cover this too, Erin. I've seen you talk about it, but you also like to really focus on like memorable moments. And so I think padding that in with your use of automations and AIs probably makes your approach really powerful. I'm curious what you would say. What makes someone say like, you have to work with her instead of just like, yeah, she was good. Or we covered some reasons they might avoid it, but like what makes people refer you? My goal for me and my clients is that people are talking about you in the rooms you're not in without you ever asking. I don't have to set up a referral program because I'm so good at what I do that you talk about me. That's the goal. So what would you say makes someone say you have to work with her?
So a few things, like one of the first things is if you do have like a discovery call or you're like DMing them, really listening to them. And so, for example, on my proposals, they're kind of like a mini sales page, but then I add like a little embedded video. And you can do this with like Loom or even like Canva now has like a free recorder that you can do. And I kind of talk to them about like, hey, this is what I heard you say, that these are your goals. These are your challenges. This is how I kind of want to help you with this. This is what I see helping. And if they mention something that you both connect on, like say you're both like a sports fan and you could mention that. Or say you both live in the city, right? Noticing those details that could kind of build that connection really could help make it memorable. And then like you mentioned, like kick off working with you, kind of sending like a little gift. Even if it's like, let's say you don't have the money for it right now, even sending them a nice little branded, like kind of like a Canva postcard or something, or even sending them like a coffee card. Or one of my clients recently, she says she uses, it's called Prezi. Have you heard of that? It's kind of, so it's like an online gift card, but they can literally choose whatever they want. So let's say like not everyone loves Starbucks. Like typically That's very popular, but not everybody is actually going to love that. So let's say you are doing even like a VIP day and you're usually give them like a Starbucks card. Well, say they don't like coffee and you remember them saying that, like, well, then don't give them a Starbucks. That's not going to really impress them. Give them some other option. And for example, like Prezi, it's still like, let's say you give them that 10 or 20 bucks or 50, whatever you decide, they can then go in and choose to use it however they want. Maybe it's for a tea shop. Maybe it's to go get like an audiobook, whatever it may be. They get to then choose whatever it is. Yeah. And then even with that. Like, yeah, I thought it was the best thing ever. Like, I'm making notes. This is what I'm using now. And even when you're doing like your intake form, I suggest that now it kind of depends on how you feel about, say, birthdays, but ask them, say, like, if you feel comfortable, let me know your birthday. Like, I'd love to celebrate you. And then also have them say, I would love to know, like, what's your business anniversary? When did you start working? Like, when did you first start launch your business? Because then you can go, and if you have automations, you can have it automate reminders to yourself of like, hey, this is coming up. You need to go do this, or even just set reminders, whether it's in your calendar, and you can then celebrate them. And that could be small, that could be big, whatever it is, but like they will remember you taking the time of like, oh yeah, they like are wanting to get to know me. They want to celebrate me. Or even post working together. Let's say they kind of forgot about you. It's been a year working together. Even sending them an email of like, hey, it's 1 year since we worked together and you took that awesome step of, let's say, getting this like professional website. I just want to say congrats on this year. And I would love to celebrate you or any wins you've had. Just remembering all of the awesomeness that they are kind of makes them feel special.
Yeah, you are starting to touch on something that like I quite literally don't see enough of. And it's so funny the amount of times we've said that to each other, I think already in the DMs, is like client experience is certainly an underutilized strategy or function of a business already for people like not used, but you're getting into like re-engagement strategies and stuff. And I definitely don't hear that talked about enough. I've only seen one other person that I work with in the space actually do it pretty well. And it's like that, hey, like this is our 1 year working together anniversary, exactly what you just said. And I know we're not working together right now, but we did like a year ago kind of thing. And it's funny. And they still stay in touch, and stuff like that. And you stay top of mind and you're memorable. When you're top of mind, you're memorable. They can also refer you. It's really those touch points. And a little bit of extra is, again, what I call it, is that extra of like, when you saw it, you're following someone on Instagram that is a lead or a client and they mention their kid's birthday, put that into your system. Do you put that kind of stuff into Dubsado or do you track it somewhere else there?
I usually put it into Dubsado. Especially if they're already a client, all of it goes into Dubsado. Sometimes if they're just a lead, it kind of depends where, like if they're just kind of warm lead or if they're getting to more hot, then I might add them to my Dubsado. But I for sure, anything that I know is happening with a potential lead or a client, I add it either to Dubsado or Asana. So for example, one of my clients, she was going to have a surgery. So it's like, hey, I am making a note so that I can go kind of check in to see how she is doing after her surgery and send her something. Or like you said, like kid's birthday. It doesn't take long to just write that down and be like, hey, happy birthday to your son or your daughter. So excited for them. How was their birthday? Blah, blah, blah. And kind of gets that conversation going and it's memorable to them.
Exactly. Yeah. And when you're memorable, you're top of mind, they not only think of you when they need something else more different, but they think of you to refer you to others. You stay top of mind. We are rounding out some specifics when it comes to how you approach giving a dreamy client experience. And your last part of that framework is why you get your time back. This is a big one because a lot of people and what you see online is money, 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 revenue, 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 which is important. But also your time is quite literally how you make money. Most of us in some way, shape, or form, we're providing a service. That service takes our time. Obviously, the less of that time we can provide the same service, that scalability, all of that great stuff. But we want more money and we want more time. So I consider that and energy the three greatest resources we have in business. How do we know that our client experience is costing us time instead of saving it? Are there any signals that we can focus on or that you suggest?
So anytime you're manually doing something instead of having it automate, that obviously will take time. And anytime you're writing something or doing something again and again, and you do not make a template, or if you're not using a scheduler. So one of my clients, she is an incredible website and branding designer. She's been in business, I believe, 7 years now. She doesn't use a scheduler. And like it shocked me. And she doesn't really post on social media. She doesn't really update her website much. She doesn't have a blog. She just has awesome referrals. But she doesn't have some of these key things that are costing her so much time. So she is literally doing that email tag back and forth just to find of like when they're going to do that kickoff call and that strategy call. Whereas if you literally just have like Calendly or Tidycal or a CRM like Dubsado or Honeybook or Moxie, then you can just send them a link and say, hey, go book it when you need to, whatever works for you. And it's done. I don't have to then follow up. Both of us get reminders to show up, because if I don't have reminders, it's not going to happen. And often for other people, their lives are busy too. It's not like they're meaning to not do something, they just won't do it. Right. And if I also then don't have like my automations of reminders of like following up, I might either forget to, or it's been so long, I feel awkward doing so. Whether that is, say, like they didn't pay their invoice because maybe they were on like vacation or something, or maybe they were just busy and they forgot. And then now you feel that awkward following up, and you're now taking more time writing that awkward email, rethinking it, or potentially not doing it and then not getting paid. And every email you write to a client could take between like maybe say 5 minutes, or if you're rethinking it and like trying to like get perfect, like even 30. So let's say an email just takes 10 minutes because you maybe need to find like links, you need to find the docs you want to send them, whatever it would be. So let's just like average of 10 minutes. If let's say you're emailing your clients 50 times in a month, that is like 500 minutes. And I think that is like over 7 hours of your time. Even if you have templates for that, that cuts that time down. And then let's say you have a Dubsado where you're literally not having to do any of that. All of those things are done for me. So let's say instead of doing over 7 hours of emailing, maybe you cut it down to like 1 hour, even 2 hours. You now have 5 or 6 hours back of your own time. And whether that's now you can take on or onboard another client, or go do a hobby, or hang out with your family, or go see friends, or go on a date night, you have time to do whatever it is that's most important to you.
Yeah. Okay. I wrote this math down too while you were doing that, just like guesswork here. So when you were going with the 7 hours, right? Let's say it took 7 hours because of the math that you shared, Erin. The energy too, there's two things I want to touch on here, like really drive home that you said is I mentioned right before I asked you that question that money is the resource we mostly think of needing or wanting more of, right? But time and energy are equally as important. And because you just drew the ROI to that, it's quite literally affecting the money. But you brought up energy there, one of the ones I mentioned in talking about like rethinking or overthinking that, or grabbing this, or backspacing and rewriting it. So that 10 minutes probably turned into a little bit more. And even if not, it's energy because you thought about it after that 10-minute email. You should have said this, that, a little bit of, nail biting or whatever. And I know these are specific cases of if there was something to be concerned about or worried about, or like if you're concerned about them paying whatever, you're spending energy, and we're not even tracking like the ROI on that yet. But the direct ROI that you're talking about here, let's say that you said 7 hours, right? If your hourly rate is $200 an hour, that's $1,400 that you just spent on emails. You're probably not tracking it that way, but you should be, because you just pointed out, right, Erin, that 5 to 6 hours you just got back. Now, maybe it is to onboard another client. So not only did you save 1,400, and you're not going to see this on your books, right? But this is what happens, because you're not going to be like, oh, I saved it because I didn't actually write emails, but it's true. And now you've also been able to make, if it's the 5 or 6 times your 200, let's say $1,200. Now you not only saved 1,400, but I see it as way more net positive than the 1,200, because you're actually doing revenue generating activities, or able to bring in more revenue versus writing those emails. So the ripple effect of the strategy of not only offering a really DREAMY client experience, because now they're referring you, which means free marketing. Free word of mouth is marketing, and it's free, right? So another way you made money, didn't spend money. You're talking about automating these steps, but also personalizing them still. So that lends itself to the experience that they're having. But by automating it, you reduce that time. So you're not spending your hourly rate on things you don't need to do, but also you're saving space to make more money. There's also another component on the ROI as we roll this out today, a way to measure this ROI that we haven't talked about, and actually haven't seen people talk about in our space a lot at all, but client lifetime value or customer lifetime value. My understanding is that you do run this for your clients or yourself potentially. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so I'm starting to kind of build this out in Airtable. But basically, like, let's say you have a client and they spent $3,000 on, let's say, like your website build. If they all of a sudden now are going and saying, hey, you have to work with her, and you get 3 more clients from them, that potentially is another $12,000. And then those clients refer to you, it kind of spider webs out. And that one initial client has now helped you find maybe even 20 people, maybe 30, right? And it just keeps spiraling out. So, and keeping track of that also, one, it's fun and amazing because you get to see the impact that you had really taking care of that one client. And it's just also amazing to see like all the different impacts of like each person really going and shouting out your name. And maybe that second person that they shout out your name to, maybe they're not interested, but now they're going and telling their friends and saying, hey, this isn't something that works for me, but you just said this, maybe you should go. And they're not even your initial client. They're just, say, your client's friend that they talk to, right? And it just keeps spiraling out. So
Yep. And like as a part of your client lifetime value, when you actually calculate that and see a number, which is how you can project the future of your business. And when you talk about sustainability and things, right? Knowing how long people typically stay with you and how much they spend being your client, part of your client lifetime value, knowing that lets you know kind of your runway, what you can expect from people. And it's not saying every single person follows the same journey, but you have the means to allow them to, and offers, upsells, and cross sells are a part of that as well. So when you take that initial person who spent $3,000 on the website build, what other offers do you have that you can now offer them? Because also remember, at the start of a client relationship, predating that, when they're a lead, we spend so much time in that building trust, right? We're building trust. We know that we have to have trust before they buy with us. We established that earlier, but now they have. And now you've given them the best dreamy client experience, right? And so they're not only referring other people, but you have the trust. They are hook, line, and sinker, because you not only delivered what you sold, what you told them you would do, but you did it in ways that are memorable, that make them feel special. And so they are more easily going to buy whatever else you're selling. So this is a great case for like an offer suite where what else? Now you've delivered the website. What else can you sell them? Because again, you just bypass the whole trust factor. That's already done. Now it's a natural conversation of like, we hammered this out. I saw you also need this. Here's how we can establish it, how you can work with me, pay the next invoice. Cool. And now you've extended your client lifetime value. And again, you saved yourself marketing, time, money, resources, because you're just selling to people that you already have a relationship with. So we've covered a lot with why this is important. That's the strategy to me. I always like to talk about why and the how. Erin, you gave tons of ways of how, like automating, making it memorable, making it easy on yourself, why it matters, how you can do it. I understand that can probably be overwhelming. Everybody's listening like, yeah, cool stuff, Erin. And when are we supposed to do all of this? So this is really powerful to people, but a bit overwhelming that are listening to this. Where do you suggest they start to kind of dig into really making their client experience a machine that generates revenue, gives them time and money back?
Okay, so kind of two ways. One, first would be kind of a do it yourself. So like my biggest thing is you need to actually take the time, and instead of just having your whole process in your head, literally map it out. So like, how does someone work with you? How do they inquire? What are you doing next? How do they know what's happening? Right? Then booking, then execution of whatever you're building, the offboarding and aftercare. Actually physically map out how they actually go through each step, and like, what are you getting from them? How is that happening? And if you can write it down, you can start to see where some of those gaps are so that you can go and improve it. It's like, oh, I'm missing the scheduler right here where I could just email it to them instead of waiting, or I'm missing this part, I could add it in here. But also, once you do that, you might be like, oh, there's a lot of parts that are overwhelming. So maybe you're like, I don't know where to start because there's so many things. So if that's the case, then you could potentially come and see me for a client experience audit. And I kind of go through, and I even could help you map out your client experience for you. And we go through to see like where some of the gaps are, what you could improve. And we go and I give you basically 3 to 5 of these are the things you need to start first. And this is literally the steps to do so. So then they can go and take their time and do what's going to actually impact them the most, instead of doing random stuff that, like, yes, that's helpful, but it may not be giving you the best bang for your buck to start with.
Yeah. I love starting with audit. Like I have 7 audits for all areas of business. So you're talking my language anytime you mention audit, because otherwise it feels a little willy-nilly. Very professional term there, but you could take some of what we said today and certainly go start implementing it. But I think an order of priority and knowing if you're already selling something and delivering it, you already have a client experience. It's just if you're owning that, if you're actually looking at all angles and making it as caring, as dreamy, as efficient as possible. So cool. I'll make sure I grab that that link for you, include it in the show notes so anyone
Thank you.
interested can take a peek at that. Yeah. And otherwise, tell people, all your new business buddies listening, where they can keep up with you outside of hanging on Rooted and Relentless with me.
So you can find me on Instagram or Threads, Wiley Strategic Solutions. And then my website is just currently being built by one of my friends who's a fantastic website designer. So that's under works, but it should be happening pretty soon. So that'll also be wileystrategicsolutions.com. So Wiley Strategic Solutions, literally on anything.
We'll find it. All right. And I'll make it extra easy and drop it in the show notes. Thank you, Erin,
Thank you.
for this important and timely conversation. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a blast.